This is Unit 2, Lecture 2. It defines and identifies some fallacies and suggests 3 questions to ask when assessing an argument. A fallacy is a bad argument. An argument can be bad because of the way it is put together or because of its language. Arguments can fail in 3 ways: when their premises are false, when the premise is at least as doubtful as the conclusion, or when premises are not logically connected to the conclusion, even if they're true. A particular kind of fallacy involving a false premise is a fallacy of inconsistency. In this fallacy, it is impossible for all the premises to be true at the same time. For example, I am an uncompromising pacifist. Joe is a warmonger. The only way I know how to deal with warmongers is to beat them senseless. Thus, I was justified in whacking Joe. Premise 1, I'm an uncompromising pacifist. And premise 3, the only way I know how to deal with warmongers is to beat them senseless, cannot be true at the same time, assuming one and the same person is making both claims. In a fallacy of circular argument, or in Latin petitio principia, the premises are at least as doubtful as the conclusion. One way to commit this fallacy is to beg the question. For example, I have to believe that Joe is an honest man because Joe himself told me so, and Joe wouldn't lie. I'm answering the question, why I believe Joe is honest, by answering, because Joe is honest. Another way to commit a fallacy of circular argument is by using a complex question as a premise. A complex question does not permit all possible answers. For example, are you still kicking puppies? Whether you answer yes or no, it's obvious that you can be inhumane. This argument doesn't allow for the possibility that the accused has never kicked puppies. When a conclusion is not logically connected to its premises, the fallacy is a non sequitur, which is Latin for "it does not follow." A non sequitur may occur because of the argument's form or because of its language. Non-formal fallacies are either ambiguous or logically irrelevant. Consider these 2 examples. If Paul is peeved, then Quincy is quiet, and Quincy is quiet, so Paul is peeved. If Penny is pouting, then Queenie is quizzical, and Queenie is quizzical, so Penny is pouting. Note that Quincy could be quiet for many reasons. He might not even know that Paul is peeved. And Queenie might be quizzical for reasons other than Penny's pouting. So it's possible for the premises to be true while the conclusion is false. The fallacy is in the form of the argument. The first premise is a hypothetical or conditional of the form if P, then Q. P is the antecedent because it comes first, and Q is the consequent. The second premise affirms the consequent, and the conclusion affirms the antecedent. Thus, this commits the fallacy of affirming the consequent. For the record, the fallacy of affirming the consequent is an invalid cousin to the valid argument form known as modus ponens, which is Latin for method of affirming. Consider these 2 examples, similar to the previous 2 but valid. Example 1, if Paul is peeved, then Quincy is quiet, and Paul is peeved, so Quincy is quiet. Example 2, if Penny is pouting, then Queenie is quizzical, and Penny is pouting, so Queenie is quizzical. Note that in these 2 examples, if the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. Here, the argument's second premise affirms the antecedent rather than the consequent, and it concludes with the consequent rather than the antecedent. There are many types of formal non sequitur, but we won't pursue this further here. Fallacies of ambiguity contain ambiguous language. In an amphiboly, the grammar of an entire sentence is ambiguous. In a fallacy of equivocation, a word or short phrase is used ambiguously. Here is an ancient and famous example of an amphiboly. King Croesus wanted to go to war with King Cyrus, but Croesus consulted the oracle at Delphi first because the oracle could predict the winner in advance. The oracle's only comment to Croesus was, if Croesus goes to war with Cyrus, he will destroy a mighty kingdom. Croesus took this to mean that he would win, but he lost. Notice that the oracle did not say whose mighty kingdom would be destroyed. And grammatically, one might read this as saying that Cyrus would destroy a mighty kingdom. So the premise could be true while the conclusion is false, the very definition of invalid. Here's an example of an equivocation. I'm too embarrassed to go to the laundromat. There is a sign there that says customers must remove their clothing as soon as the machine stops. Here the word remove is ambiguous. It may mean take out, or it may mean take off. There are many types of equivocation, but this will do for now. There are also many types of fallacy of irrelevance. A common one is the argumentum ad hominem, or argument against the person. To commit this fallacy is to attack an arguer rather than to attack the logic of the argument. For example, Mary says that the economy is living on borrowed time, but you can't take the word of someone who has been in jail twice. But Mary's jail experience notwithstanding, she may be an excellent economist. The argumentum ad ignorantium, or appeal to ignorance, is another common fallacy of irrelevance. To commit this fallacy is to use one's ignorance as proof against a fact about which one knows nothing. For example, I've never seen a ghost, so there aren't any. Just because I haven't seen a ghost doesn't mean there aren't any. Here's an example of an ad verecundium fallacy, or appeal to unsuitable authority. That handsome actor from the soap operas says that pain beacon is the best pain reliever, so it must be. This fallacy applies someone's expertise in one area, in this case acting, to an area where it doesn't necessarily fit, in this case medicine. This ad misericordiam fallacy, or appeal to pity, appeals to pity rather than to logic as a means to prove the point. For example, I don't deserve a low grade for my sloppy exam because I lost a lot of money at the casino the night before the exam. In summary, when engaging in a logical analysis of a written, spoken, or imagined passage, we should address three questions. What is the conclusion? What are the premises? And do the premises support the conclusion? This is the end of our brief look at logic. Next up, Pope John Paul II's encyclical on faith and reason.